Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, during a press conference today, made it abundantly clear that he has already determined in his mind who won this election, even though the results, based on how Americans voted, says otherwise. Take a look.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. All right, we're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, a minute afternoon, will also be successful. I went through a transition on the front, and I've been on the other side of this. I'm very confident that we will do all the things that are necessary to make sure that the government, the United States government, will continue to perform its national security function as we go forward.
Mike Pompeo, a man who justifies the United States invading other countries to root out authoritarianism, is essentially enabling authoritarianism in this country and basically giving Americans a giant middle finger when it comes to the democratic process.
So every elected Republican knows that there is no credible case of voter fraud. And every elected Republican knows that even if all of Donald Trump's outlandish conspiracy theories were true, it's still not enough votes to overturn any of the state's elections. So, but they're all going along with this fiction because they're scared of the crybaby. And the baby doesn't get and he hasn't worked out his feelings yet. And so he's in his bunker boys in his room trying to figure out what to do with his emotions. And so while he does that, the one thing that he has revealed is the cowardice and the weakness of the Republican Party. So now we already knew that they didn't care about democracy, and they've made that clear in so many ways, and they continue to make it clear, and we've got more on that later in the program. But now we know on top, other than right now, as it stands, 4 people, no one in the Republican Party has the courage to tell Donald Trump, hey, listen, you little whiner, you lost. Man up, clean yourself up, stop crying, and do what we are supposed to do in a democracy, a peaceful transition. You have no case at all. Instead, these sniveling little cowards run around pretending that he won. You think Mike Pompeo doesn't know that Donald Trump lost? You think he doesn't know that they lost every single court case that they brought? And humiliatingly so? Of course he knows that. Still, he says things like this. So the 4, by the way, are Mitt Romney. Who would have thought that Mitt Romney is the strongest guy in the Republican Party? I wouldn't have guessed that in a million years. It turns out he's way stronger than Ted Cruz or Lindsey Graham or Mitch McConnell. At least he's his own man, and he can stand up to a little baby like Donald Trump. Ben Sasse, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins. Now at this point, Susan Collins won a re-election. She's not gonna be up for another 6 years. So on this one, I'll give her a little bit of credit. She's got no reason not to go along with the rest of the Republican Party. But those 4 said, no, he lost, Biden won, let's move on. Every other person in the Republican Party, cowards through and through, cheaters through and through, and they hate America. They hate this country. In this country, we have democracy, not thuggery like this.
Well, Mike Pompeo did get challenged on his statement by one of the reporters at this press conference, so let's take a look at that exchange.
You believe there's widespread voter fraud, that the reports that we're getting from Pennsylvania, from Michigan, showing vote totals and massive leads or significant leads with 99% reporting are going to be overturned, and that the United States failed to conduct a fraudulent free election?
Rich, I'm the Secretary of State. I'm getting calls from all across the world. These people are watching our election. They understand that we have a legal process. They understand that this takes time, right? It took us 37 plus days in an election back in 2000. We conducted a successful transition then. I'm very confident that we will count, and we must count every legal vote. We must make sure that any vote that wasn't lawful ought not be counted. That dilutes your vote if it's done improperly. Got to get that right. When we get it right, we'll get it right.
They apparently can't get anything right, and they just continue to embarrass themselves. Grace Panetta, who's a reporter with Business Insider, just published a story and tweeted the following: Trump's big new election lawsuit alleges voter fraud potentially happened in 2 Pennsylvania counties. Both overwhelmingly voted for him.
He's such a loser. His main claim before this was, they didn't let us see the ballots in Philadelphia. Now that's of course not true. That was the famous and now hilarious case where they went in and said, where the judge asked them, so were there Republican observers in the room? And Trump's lawyer had to say, there was non-zero people in the room. And the judge is like, so you're saying there were observers? And the lawyer said, yes, there were Republican observers. It's a lie, it's always been a lie. It was proven to be a lie in open court. But when Pompeo gets asked a straightforward question, are you saying that American elections are fraudulent? The whole world was watching. Are they free and fair or are they fraudulent? I don't know, we gotta look at the process. No, wait a minute. There is a process. And in 2000, where it took 37 days, as he alluded to, well, it was 500 votes in a massive state like Florida, and it was within the recount margin. In this case, is there any states within the recount margin? Yes, Georgia. Georgia's within the recount margin. So you know what they should do? They should follow the process and recount Georgia. No one has ever objected to that. Did they prove any voter fraud in Georgia? None. Who runs Georgia? Republicans do. The governor's a Republican, the Secretary of State's a Republican, the legislature is Republican. So that the Republicans cheat on behalf of Joe Biden, how maniacally stupid do you have to be to believe that? But it's not that they're stupid. There's two factors. One, they're scared of the baby. And number two is, they think their own voters are rubes, suckers. So they think, they'll believe anything we say. And it turns out they're right. Now, nearly 2/3 of Republicans say they no longer have any faith in the election system in America. Because I told you, they live in a different world. And I was wondering what was gonna happen when Trump lost. And now they go, oh, well, that can't be true. Everything we know, every conservative outlet, every Republican politician told us that Trump had an overwhelming lead. So if he lost, it must be that we no longer have a democracy and they cheated in every state. So it turns out maybe they were right. Their voters are rubes. They're the biggest suckers in the country.
Yeah, and remember yesterday I shared that there were some lower level Trump administration officials, employees who have begun sending out their resumes because they realize what the reality of the situation is. And now we're learning that John McAdee, who's the director of the White House Presidential Personnel Office, is spreading the word throughout the administration that if he hears of anyone looking for another job, they'll be fired immediately. Jake Tapper, by the way, is tweeting this, and it was reported by the Associated Press earlier. The news is dismaying to many members of the Trump administration who worry especially about young staffers who will soon need other sources of income given the fact that the president did lose his reelection.
You're forcing me to do a sidebar here. So Jake Tapper, by the way, on Twitter now crying about poor Republicans who worked in the Trump administration because Democrats are saying they shouldn't be hired by other folks in DC, certainly not in the government or elsewhere, because they disgrace themselves by being against democracy. And Tapper's like, oh, but I know them in the cocktail circuit. They're such lovely Republicans. That's all fine. That's all fine. You want to say, hey, you know what? Let's blacklisting people for the rest of their careers just because they were fascists. That's unbecoming. All right, that's an interesting argument. But Jake, did you say when the Democratic Party said they were going to blacklist progressives? Anyone who worked against a Democratic incumbent, that it was outrageous and that you were shocked and chagrined? Nope, not a word. When you blacklist progressives, Jake Tapper and the entire mainstream media, they're there for it. They love it. When you do it to their beloved establishment Republicans, all of a sudden, they're heartbroken over it. You're just gonna do this over fascism? I mean, at least progressives are trying to help people. That's way worse, isn't it? Yeah, that's what I thought, Jake. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.